prediction of the coming of Messiah who would redeem his people from their sins. The Israelites had fallen extremely rebellious against God. In Isaiah 1:18-20, Isaiah had been sent by God to give the people a warning and offer of promises and hope and of prosperity if they obey God's law. But the Israelites continued to travel down a path of destruction. In Isaiah chapter 6, the chapter begins with Isaiah describing the encounter that he had with God and some angels. Isaiah says he saw God seated in a temple, surrounded by angels, who were singing and worshiping God. I cannot even imagine me walking down the street and I look up or out and I see God sitting on a throne with flying seraphims. I'll be like, in the Middle East, Oakland, really? I wondered if I would have been like Isaiah. Would I have been to confess all my sins? Isaiah became overwhelmed with guilt of his sinfulness nature. He didn't even know what God was about to do. Not only did he out himself, but Isaiah was outing out his mom and them too. Isaiah was marinating in self-pity. Woe is me, I am ruined. This sounds like that maybe he had been coming from the club and he was just whistling and he sees God. Immediately he felt the sense of doom because he didn't know what God was going to do, so he just began confessing his sins. For I am a man of unclean lips, he outs himself. And I live among people of unclean lips, he outs his mom and them. I can imagine him rubbing his eyes and saying, I'm full of sin, and yet I still see God, the Lord Almighty. How many of us know that we serve a God of justice and that his mercy endures? Proverbs 28:13 NIV reads, whoever conceals their sin does not prosper, but the one who confesses and renounces them find mercy. See, y'all, Isaiah fell into immediate confession. Isaiah describes how one of the seraphims touched his mouth with a live coal from the altar, and the seraphim said, see, this has touched your lips, your guilt is taken away, and your sin atoned for. And just like that, Isaiah was made anew. But Isaiah must have felt new after the atonement, because in verse 8, to me, it doesn't appear that God was speaking directly to Isaiah. It appears that God perhaps was speaking to the heavenly council when God asked, whom shall I send, who will go for us? God is asking who will go and deliver the judgment that will be cast down upon the rebellious people of Israelite. Now at the time, Isaiah had no clue as what the task was. I imagine that Isaiah was ear hustling and overheard God ask a question, and so he stood up big and tall and said with his chest, here I am, send me. Isaiah went from participating in self-pity to being bold for God. Isaiah didn't even know what he was volunteered for. He just knew that God could have done anything he wanted to do to him. And based off Isaiah's overwhelmingly guilty conscience, Isaiah just feared the worst. And because we serve a God that is just, God purified Isaiah of all his sins and spared his life. And for that, Isaiah felt he owed God everything. And Isaiah was willing to do whatever it was to show his appreciation. I wonder this for myself, and I wonder this for you. Knowing God has saved us from a path that some of us don't want to travel back down nor talk about. Knowing that God has spared our lives, and for some of us more than once. Knowing that God has atoned us from our sinful past. I wonder if you or I overheard the voice of God calling, whom shall I send? I wonder, us not knowing what the call was in response to. I wonder, will we put aside our self-pity in order to serve God's purpose? I wonder, do we acknowledge Ephesians 2:8 that says, for it is by grace you have been saved through faith, and it is not from ourselves, it is a gift of God. I wonder, do we acknowledge Acts 17:28, for in him we live and move and we have our being? I wonder, do we know that we owe God everything? I wonder, do we have the valor of Isaiah? When God asks, whom shall I send? Will we stand and say with our chest, here am I, send me. Thank you.